In this demo, I'm going to be discussing how to create very realistic watercolor looks from photos using Fotosketcher. Specifically, I'll be demonstrating how each of the sliders and other things affect the final outcome. Before I go into this, let's talk briefly about best practices. First of all, work with small to medium-sized JPEG images. Overly large files will slow the process down or crash it completely. 1200 pixels to 5000 pixels for the largest dimension is probably your best range to work with. Let's begin by looking at the Drawing Parameters dialog box in Fotosketcher. The four most important parameters are the drawing style, the slider options, thumbnail preview, and then the little palette, which is the Start the Process button. Additionally, there is a load, save, and reset parameters, but I'll discuss that later, as well as texture and other effects, as well as the manual paintbrush. There are a few other things that will also affect how your finished image looks. They are file size, in other words, pixel dimensions, stopping and saving a paused image before it is completed, and whether or not you are starting with an altered image either from Fotosketcher or another program. The drawing style lets you select the type of effects you wish to create. In this case, we're going to talk about just the three watercolor styles, which are in the Painting Effects subgroup. I'll try now to explain the differences between these three painting styles. I'm going to start with Painter 9 for reasons that'll become clear as I go into the other options. Painting Style 9 basically works by building an image from a pattern template. It also allows more edge effects to show through and adds no additional patterning to the image. Painting Effect 5 also works by building an image from a pattern template, but it also combines this with a modeled pattern overlay. Finally, Paint Effect 1 works by diffusing an image with a modeled overlay, but it does less effect to the image itself other than to apply a small amount of simplification to the initial image. And it also blends areas of colors together, producing much softer edges. Now this is all pretty much academic, but it does give you a frame of reference as to how Fotosketcher works. My starting image for this demo is a photo of an oriental still life I created. The initial file size was about 6000 by 3000 pixels, but I reduced it down to 1200 by 768 for purposes of this demo. I'm going to go ahead and demonstrate this with Painting Effect number 9 with my starting image. As I said before, the starting image is 1200 by 768. And I'll go ahead and click on Draw, and you can see the status bar in the bottom progressing. As you can see, it progresses very fast at this resolution. And now I have my final image. Now, if I wanted to change any of these parameters, you can see as I move the slider, the little thumbnail sketch changes that view, and I can move it around to different parts. And you can sort of get an idea of what the effect looks like. Now I should mention that the effect, if I start it again, is not cumulative. In other words, when I hit draw, even though the image here is showing the effect from the previous iteration, it's going to start with this image and just redraw it. And I'll just go ahead and demonstrate that quickly. So now this is the new drawing with the parameters that have just been changed. And then I can just go ahead and reset those back to the default. Now let's examine how changing each of these effect parameters individually affect the final image. The number of iterations effect basically adds more passes over the overall image. The higher the number of iterations, the slower the time to completion. Also, the lower the number, more white space between the brush strokes and a rougher image, and the higher numbers produce more body and details and closer to the original photographic image. The size of the paintbrush affects how large the pattern or brush strokes are. Larger sizes will create a less precise looking image, while the smaller the brush size, the closer it will look to the original image. The precision of brush strokes affects how closely the brush strokes align to both each other and the original image. Less precision means more overlap and a more abstract looking image. Edge intensity affects how well defined the outlines are. The higher the intensity, the more definition you'll see in the outlines from the original starting image. Darken and lighten are pretty basic. They just affect how much lighter or darker the image is from the original. In this example, I'm going to stop the drawing before it has completed the entire rendering. So I'll go ahead and click on Draw, and you can see the status bar. But this time, I'm going to stop it at 60%. And you can see it's a much more rough drawing. If I like that, I can kind of look at various parts of it. If I like that, I can come up here to save the drawing as, and simply save it. As you can see, it gives it 60% and give it a name. In this case, I'm going to go ahead and cancel that. Hit cancel again, and it will continue rendering it. I can stop it again at 78% by pressing the escape key, and again I can save it or continue.